Democratic Party is useless to this end, telling us to fight, but not really telling us how. So I'm gonna tell you how we're gonna rebuild, because this fighting thing is going to be a personal choice for each of us. So I'm gonna focus on rebuilding, because the most dangerous part of a constitutional crisis is a political vacuum. What is a political vacuum? It's basically a absence of the rule of law, and there's a lot of different factions who are trying to fight as to how to rebuild or how to organize the society that they want to see, or various society that they've been wanting to, right? That's different from the one that was in dominance. Now, obviously, here, as you know me, I'm a constitutional scholar at the very least, and a constitutional patriot at the maximum. Why? Like, I realized that the founding fathers of the United States Constitution had a lot of problematic characteristics. However, when it comes to the actual social contract, how I see it is kind of like moving into a house, and everything you want is already there, right? You want a little bit more, but you see the house and you're like, I can work with this and I can add it onto it, because obviously the one who lived here really wanted a lot of the things that I want, so I'm just gonna add on to it. That's how I see the Constitution. The ones who created the United States Constitution wanted an absolute utopia of benefits for white men. Obviously problematic. However, when we move into the house as disenfranchised people, we're like, hey, this is some good ideas, right? There's parts that aren't, like the electoral college, but the electoral college has no legal backing. It's just opinion. It's originalism, which is basically the opinion of the lawmakers, or the opinion of the founding fathers, which is stupid, because if we position originalism versus textualism based on the social contract, then we're bounded not by what the Constitution says, but by the opinion of those who created. And if we align through that, then women wouldn't have rights, obviously. Because when the Constitution was created, it wasn't included to include women. Rather, it should be textualism. However, we give some space in order for our judges and justices to use originalism. Why? Because obviously, white supremacy, we need to uphold that. And the fear that textualism would be much more too progressive. The reason why Amendment 14, Section 3 is said to be not self-executing is because of Griffin's case, which basically a judge said, if I adhere to the Constitution, to this text, which is ridiculous as I say it, then it's gonna discriminate against the Southern rebels, right? They won't be able to go into office, which is the entire point. But he positioned something based on his own opinion rather than the Constitution, which, if you read Federalist 78 through 83, the laws and rules of the judges and courts have to be in alignment and in faithfulness to the United States Constitution. So we've actually strayed from that reality. And we don't have any recourse. Why? Because there is judicial immunity, which basically means that we cannot hold them accountable. Because why? Because if they were held accountable, then they wouldn't want to do their job. It doesn't make any sense, which means that we have to rebuild on our Constitution. But I love the bones of our Constitution. So in this reality, that we're criticizing the Democratic Party, that we're criticizing the ambiguity that led to where we are, we have to unite to an objective. And the objective that I position here in my channel for rebuilding is that restoration of the United States Constitution. It's not even going towards this side, towards that side. It's like, let's restore what we had and build on top of that. And I don't mean build it through the long term channels where it's gonna take years and decades to even get anything fundamentally and put it into our reality. What I'm calling for when this does get fixed and we rebuild is we the people invoking Article 5, the delegate channel. Why? Because we literally, through all the failures that we can literally prove through evidence that exists that allowed for this to occur, the constitutional crisis of the Democratic Party not even challenging transition into tyranny, right? This means that there was a three-branch failure to even prohibit this, because at the forefront, Donald Trump should have used the Insurrection Act to stop the January 6th insurrection from even happening, but we know that those are his compatriots, right? That's why he pardoned them. We then have non-traditional avenues to create this change, like positioning that we have zero confidence in all three branches, and as a reality, executing a constitutional convention. Yes, like the one that happened in 1787, because Alexander Hamilton and our founding fathers positioned that because of the Shays Rebellion, there had to be substantial changes to the contract, which was the Articles of Confederation. They positioned this no taxation, this small federal government, this reduced government spending isn't working. So we have to transition into one where there is a bigger role for the federal government. However, that doesn't necessarily encroach on state rights. Now, the state didn't like that because that meant that the federal government can protect its citizens against the state. Do you understand why the state is always against federal government? Because they don't like being regulated. They don't like being held accountable for violating the rights of their residents. But in our reality, there was such a breach that it resulted in the loss, at least momentarily, of our constitutional legitimacy. And as a response, we have to fix that. However, there's so much ambiguity and shortcomings in our constitution that we cannot trust that it can be sufficient in actually rebuilding us into a better union without actually fixing it. But we cannot depend on the branches that failed us to fix it. So we have to fix it ourselves. So that's going to require a constitutional convention. And you're gonna say, hey, Republicans have been wanting a constitutional convention, but even without invoking Article 5, they got what they wanted. So I don't know why we're over here scared about it. At the worst minimum, there's states who won't want to ratify, and that means a split, but it's gonna be a peaceful, coordinated split. And blue dots and red states, don't worry about it. I'm sure we're going to figure something out in order to channel you to the sites where you want to be. However, we cannot keep pretending like our constitution is perfect. We cannot continue pretending like our government officials actually want resolve. No, I feel like the Democratic Party just loves seeing us in desperation, and as a reality, it improves on their funding, right? However, they don't actually position themselves to restore the trust that they've lost historically, but also to become a better party with an actual backbone. So I don't really think that the Democratic Party, as it is right now, is fit in this future of a better union. However, I do like the ideology that brought us all together to that brand. However, I do not believe that it is the party to get us there. And while there are Democrat individuals who would really be beneficial to such a reality, as a collective, they're useless. And the new DNC chair will be useless as well. So what I want you to get from this video is to commit to an objective, and the commitment here in this channel is the restoration of the United States Constitution. That means the dissolution of this illegitimate government. Now, how is a great question, right? But what I want to do isn't guide on that how, but guide as to how we can rebuild, because that's going to be the part that's going to be extremely critical in positioning whether we're capable of prospering from such a conflict, right? And in the reality where we're all striving towards the restoration of the Constitution, and we're more united in a common goal across our different demographics. And again, I want you to know that in our reality, will the Democrats have sufficiently maximize the resolve that they could have had before he was actually inaugurated, before he was actually certified? They refused to do that. They rejected to do that for personal reasons, whatever that is. There's no reality in which we would have backed down for any boom booms unless it was a space nuke. That I can see, and I guess it's kind of valid, but then it doesn't make sense as to why would we give their asset the nuclear codes. It doesn't make sense. But what does make sense is that they gave up our republic because they were scared either blackmail or threats. But in this reality, we just have to throw the entire thing away because none of the branches are going to work for us. And I don't know what that means, but I know that we need an objective. And that's what I hope to guide through. And it's unfortunate because, I feel like the constitutional knowledge I have isn't relevant right now since it's null, but I know that we need something to strive to, and the Constitution, if it's built on top of, can become much more inclusive of all of us and also rise to a progressive future for a better union as our preamble positions.